Good afternoon to you. Mark Sott with HurricaneTrack.com. It's Thursday, the 23rd day of June, 2022, and we need to talk about a very busy signal potentially developing here in the tropics. This is important because if this goes on to develop well east of the islands, this system that we're watching, it could absolutely signal what we have been told could happen, and that would be that we could have a very, very busy season on our hands. I will explain it all as we move through a bunch of tabs here this afternoon. So the area that we're watching, way out here in the deep tropical Atlantic, it is way out there, and that is significant in and of itself. How far east and south this is located is a big deal. So over the next 2 days, virtually no chance that it goes on to become a depression. But over the next 5 days, a 2 in 10 shot, so that's not bad for the odds for this system. And again, it's still well to the east of where we would expect development this time of year. Real quick, don't want to ignore anything in the Pacific. We do have Celia. It's going to be way out in the open Pacific here. Not bothering anybody. Could become a hurricane. Might send some swells up towards the Baja and maybe even Mazatlan from there, just as an example. Other than that, the eastern Pacific, nice and quiet. So why is this system in the deep tropical Atlantic such a big deal? Because it's not supposed to be there. Climatologically speaking, we don't look this far east this early very often at all. Now, this particular chart only goes through 2015. Why they haven't updated it is beyond me, but that's not my department. This is what it shows. I can tell you, this one that developed, that's the 1933 Great Trinidad Hurricane, a very deadly hurricane. And then Elsa developed only last year, a little bit farther to the east, somewhere around here, and Elsa was the second farthest east that early, with the 1933 hurricane, Trinidad hurricane, being the earliest that far east. That makes sense? I hope so. So this is important because this is June, and this is where we normally see development all over here, and certainly in the southeastern Pacific, and we've got Celia over there, but we usually look to August to get development. We're in the last third of June. This is the last third of August, and that's when you would look that far to the east. And so this is very unusual. Now, make no mistake, nothing has developed yet. I want to make that clear. It's not even an invest. I don't even know what number we're going to be up to next, 93L or something. That would be the next stage here. We have this area of interest now. It becomes an invest or an investigation area, and it gets a number. I think the number would be 93 or something like that, and then L for Atlantic, and then we go from there. So we have a ways to go, but I'm telling you, as I'll show you as we go through, this one has a pretty good shot. It's got model support, warm water temperatures, other things I'll show you as we progress. So yeah, we had Elsa last year, and in fact, it originated from a tropical wave that itself left the west coast of Africa on June 27th. So that's 4 days later than now. So we're even 4 days earlier than last year with this system splashing down in the Atlantic. So that is pretty significant. Elsa went on, as you might recall, I'll show you the map here, to become a hurricane briefly through the eastern Caribbean, a very rare feat to do in that portion of the hurricane season. And then it suffered some shear and went over some of the islands, became a hurricane again very briefly off the coast of Florida, and then made landfall up here in the Big Bend. I went down to the area, Horseshoe Beach, Cedar Key, and vicinity for that storm last year. I remember it. But the 1933 Trinidad hurricane, and they don't use the word great, I'm sorry. Sometimes they do. They'll say the great so-and-so hurricane, because they didn't name them back then. And we didn't have satellites in 1933, but that's a significant one also. And remember, climatology is important. What else is important about 1933? I'll let you play at home. Do you know the answer? The answer is that is one of the biggest hurricane seasons of all time. Right up there with 05 and 20. One of the highest ACE-producing hurricane seasons ever. Lots of named storms, and we had no satellites. So it was probably even busier than what the historical record shows. So when you start seeing things that happen in and around those kind of benchmarks like 1933, that's important. It really is. All right, so here's what we have, the area that we're watching off the coast of Africa already. So it's already there, already out over the water and starting to do its thing. And nice satellite animation here. It's located on the right-hand side. The way the curvature of the Earth is, you're seeing kind of over the edge. No, the Earth is not flat. If it was flat, everything would look, you wouldn't have that distortion looking around a curved Earth. So there you go. I think this proves it once and for all. But there it is out there over the open tropical Atlantic. We will be watching this closely. It's got a long ways to go before it even does potentially impact anybody. But you folks over here in the islands, Trinidad, Tobago, Barbados, and certainly the Northern Antilles, you don't want to ignore this. I mean, maybe it could bring some rain. One thing to note about these things, they are an envelope of energy. And what I mean by that, that term is used a lot. You can mail something in an envelope. You can envelop something. It becomes a verb. It's weird, isn't it? The English language. But this itself is an envelope or a pouch. A lot of scientists refer to these as pouches of energy. And it's large and trying to curl up, and it affects the trade winds. It bends those trade winds. And so it could be large enough, hopefully, that you can get some rain in areas that need the rain. Now, I mentioned the windwards needing some rain yesterday, and a few people on YouTube were saying, nope, we've had plenty of rain, we're good. I don't know everything about everybody in every location, but I do know that up in St. John, for example, our good friend Brent lives there. He was telling me how dry it is. So we can hope that maybe this will bring some beneficial rain to those who need it and pass on those who don't. That's the easy way out, right? All right, and yes, it's got a lot of moisture. Here is the total precipitable water. A great animation here. Our tropical wave and our energy that we're really watching is right in here, and it's starting to bend. You know, you can even see here it's starting to affect the way that the wind is moving out there. It's starting to curl up a little bit. The Saharan air layer, non-existent out in front of it. In fact, any deep Saharan air and dry air is pretty far to the north. There's some out here well to the west, but everything's moving in tandem. And this thing is not racing off very fast where it's going to catch this SAL, or Saharan air layer. So it's got that going for it. It really does. And I think that's why we're seeing some of the modeling really start to pick up on this day after day. The all-important vorticity signature. There it is. There's your beginnings of what we will be watching for. This is one of my favorite tools that tells me, looking under the hood, so to speak, what does it look like? How does the beginnings of this engine look? And there you go. We're starting to see a little bit of energy coalesce, and we'll watch that and see how it evolves over the coming days. In fact, I'm going to save this image, and we will compare them tomorrow. All right, so mental note, Mark, save the image so you can compare it tomorrow. This is important too. I have been talking about this, I mean, pretty much all the time, but really this year, huge, because anomalies, your departures from a long-term mean or average, are very important. Your actual sea surface temperatures are crucial as well, of course. You need about 80 degrees Fahrenheit and 26 or so Celsius, and fairly deep warm water. It can't just be right at the surface or it's easy to cool off. In other words, you need some pretty decent upper ocean heat content. That's important. But also, if the water is warmer than average, then you've got more energy. It just goes, stands to reason. So look at this, right off the coast of Africa. I mean, it's just textbook. That whole area, we're talking 2, maybe 3 degrees Celsius right against the coast. The way that the winds have been blowing in from the west and southwest here lately at about 5,000 feet have been coming kind of opposite of what the trades normally do, and that has helped to push that warmer water towards Africa. We're not getting the strong easterly winds that sometimes we see that causes upwelling out here, and literally like blowing across the top of a cup of coffee. Strong trades can just cool off the surface of the ocean. And remember, back to the mimic product real quick here. Where was it? Right there. Without the abundance of Saharan air and dust is important. All this area is not covered in dust in the, what is it, about, 18,000 feet up or 12,000 feet, whatever. I think it's 10,000 feet, sorry. Bottom line is it's not dusty out here, and dust blocks the sun. And that helps to cool the sea surface temperatures, and that's not happening either. So that's a key factor here. So it's no wonder that this is happening. The triggers for the various models are getting pulled, all right? They're getting triggered. And this is the Euro from last night from weathernerds.org. And you can see that the Euro ensembles, that's a lot of members. It's not just a couple of them. People look at models, you look at the operational, you look at the ensembles, all of those what ifs. And man, when they're all lighting up like that, that is huge agreement. So let's see if it's even more robust later today. We get this the best runs, generally speaking, are the 0Z and the 12Z. And the 12Z will be rendering over the next several hours. And I'm sure people will share it and talk about it on social media. But there you go. That's it. It's getting lit up. And what's this? What is this business up here? The Euro trying to pick up a little piece of energy that rapidly develops and tries to head out to the northeast there. Can't ignore it because there's a cluster of the ensemble members. Let's wait for it to recycle right there. And it's almost immediate that it tries to get going, and then it weakens pretty quickly over colder water, whatever it would be. Do we see it, by the way, on the satellite imagery? Well, let's go back and look real quick on the GOES shot. That's the wrong one, Mark. There is some energy out here, but it's more upper level energy, not really making it down to the surface, so I'm not too worried about that. But it is a weather maker for marine interests, and it could head up towards the Canadian Maritimes there. And yeah, the Euro is showing. I mean, look at some of those pressures there as it recycles. There's a couple of rogue systems that try to develop late in the period. But, we're talking very, very weak overall. So, and the Hurricane Center didn't even mention it yet, so no big deal. All right? So other people talking about this, obviously on social media. By the way, I interviewed Andy yesterday, Andy Hazelton, for a special edition of Hurricane U. I'll have that ready for you tomorrow. It's going to become very timely and very important. He and I discussed the TUT, the Tropical Upper Tropospheric Trough, and a little bit about climatology again. But here you go. He says, we'll see if the objective tracker, these are just different things with the internal workings of these models, picks up on it. But this 12Z cycle of the operational GFS, I'm putting some words in his mouth, or in his tweet, appears to be the first that I've seen with a legitimate, just speak, Mark, tropical cyclone east of the Lesser Antilles from the area that the NHC highlighted. And by the way, that's why we call these INVEST eventually, so we don't keep calling them the area or that system. Once it gets organized enough, it'll become an INVEST, and we'll call it 93L or 94L or whatever the heck it's going to be. So GFS, starting to see it there, and we can see that picking up at about day 5. Good moisture envelope with it. The driest air is way up here. Trades are not screaming across. And 1004 millibars at the surface, that would be a tropical depression, maybe a tropical storm, speculating. We'll see. And then he goes on to mention, also with the caveat that it's a model, it is wild to see the TEJ, and I don't know exactly if that's the tropical easterly jet. I don't know what that means exactly, but I will opine that maybe that's the tropical easterly jet or tropospheric easterly jet. I don't know. Extend well into the Caribbean in June with the TUT. That is the tropical upper tropospheric trough. Shove north and a cutoff upper level low heading west. And yes, he and I talked about it yesterday. Right there. There it is. And we'll zoom in on this. Upper level low over here. The TUT is way out of the way. So any system that comes through could be well ventilated instead of sheared by the TUT. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. Well, in the Hurricane U episode, I'll show you. I'll have it ready for you tomorrow. So let's look at the GFS and the Canadian. Two decent models. The Canadian model has gotten a lot of ridicule over the years for being, people call it the crazy uncle and other things, that it just runs with convection too much and blows up everything. Well, they have really, I mean, come on, they put serious work into it, and people, when they bash science, yeah, it's okay, fun sometimes a joke, but it's a very serious thing because real scientists and real mathematicians and physicists are trying to get it right. And it has done better in recent years, handling the physics. I mean, do you want to program a computer model that projects the weather patterns for the globe? Good luck with that. Sometimes you're going to have issues. But it has gotten better. That's the caveat here, or the disclaimer, or whatever. First, though, the GFS. And it's had its problems over the years. I mean, look, recently it's been developing anything and everything down here and sending Cat 4 hurricanes to Texas all the time. And none of that has happened. So Even the great American GFS can have its own issues. All right, all that out of the way, what do we got? Well, this is the initial conditions. There's our system right there. Not much to it, but it does show the vorticity pretty nicely. There's Celia, by the way, a fairly well-developed tropical storm, so that shows you kind of where we would be evolving towards. What would we be looking for? Well, let's move this out into time, and I'll show you. And two, by the way, a little bit of a reflection right there in the GFS. This 850 millibars, that's only 5,000 feet up. So a little bit of a reflection there out over the Gulf Stream. Maybe there is a mention from the Hurricane Center. I'll check one more time before we sign off here to see if they've mentioned that. I'll do that when we're just about finished. Let me continue with this, though, because I'm distracting myself. All right, we're 24 hours out. Let's go to 48. Look, there it is. There's the system starting to close off a little bit more energy, more of a vorticity signature. That system up here is coming up towards Nova Scotia, whatever becomes of it. It could be some rain and some squalls or windy conditions, maybe some locally rough seas. Again, we'll see if the Hurricane Center mentions it in just a few minutes. 72 hours with our system, trying to organize a little more. And then finally at 96, there it is. It's really starting to pick up well to the south here. That's about 10 degrees latitude right there, roughly. Pretty good estimation of it. South of this very fat subtropical ridge. So westward it goes towards the Windward Islands. Eventually, it looks like this is day 5. Finally, day 6 through the windwards, and then day 7 into the Caribbean. That, if it happens, that development early on, right through there, would be pretty darn early, competing with, and like I said, this is important, going back to the beginning, 1933, 2021, the 33, of course, was the Trinidad hurricane last year with Elsa. If this gets going earlier than any of those, and it might, you never know, I'm telling you, this is a signal. It is definitely a signal that all of the Atlantic is conditionally favorable, pending regional favorability windows. Doesn't mean we're going to have hurricanes all the time. It's just we're not having to wait until the last third of August for something to develop. And the Canadian model generally agrees. We move this out into time. You know what you're looking for, right? There it is. You can see it. It jumps out at you. Same kind of deal. It's a little bit slower. This is, day 5. It's still pretty far east of the islands. And then finally at day 6, it goes through a little bit more to the north. And we'll wait and see. That's about day 7, and we'll stop there. Bottom line is the models are picking up on it. So we're going to have to watch and see closely, obviously, what happens. So let's chime into the Hurricane Center real quick and see if they've updated things. Nope, not just yet. I was hoping they would have. That's fine. That's all good. Before I let you go, I've had a few people email and ask, do you still have your hurricane tracking maps? Yes, I do. And you can get yours. I'll put the link in the description of today's video. I thought I had one in the office to show you. It's really big. It's like 18 by 24. I've shipped almost all of them, but I still have a few left, full color track map, and I send it to you nice and folded up. I tried using tubes, by the way, and several of those just got lost. I literally think that they rolled around in some warehouse or wherever, and it's just harder for them to, I just put them in a large envelope, fold them twice, send them to you, and they're good to go. And at least when they're not rolled, it's not hard to put them on a wall. They try to curl up if they're rolled anyway. However, if you want one, they're still available. Check the link in today's video description. All right, let's go back to this so I can sign out and get this onto YouTube for you. So, summarizing, yes, this is a big sign. It really piques my interest. It is something that could mean a lot. If it fizzles and doesn't do much, then it'll be like, all right, back to the drawing board, so to speak. But I'm telling you, the evidence is really starting to lean, as I just showed you, into the direction of we need to watch this not only for what it could do in the next week or so, week, 5 days, whatever, and what it means for the future of the rest of the hurricane season. I believe it's a very important signal and a big marker. All right? If you're new to my YouTube channel, subscribe, like, share, hit the notification button. You know what to do. But seriously, if you're brand new, I appreciate you watching. Become a subscriber of the channel. It costs nothing. And you get notified when I post these videos. Appreciate the growth that we've had over the years, and especially as each hurricane season starts, people come back and they subscribe and they're with me throughout the season, and that is wonderful. Thanks for giving me a part of your afternoon so I could tell you what I'm looking at. All right? That is it from me. I am Mark Sudduth. This is Hurricane Track. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow morning with my next edition of What's Up in the Tropics.